This 1-hour crash course is the perfect starting point if you have decent knowledge in object-oriented programming and PHP and want to dive into Laravel. During this course, we will learn the most important concepts of Laravel and build small personal notes application, where we can register, verify our email address, login, create, read, update, or delete our personal notes from the database. During this course, you will get familiar with Laravel's file and folder structure, learn how to change its configuration, how to define roles, how to generate modules and migrations, how to define factories and create seed data in the database, how to generate controllers, how to implement CRUD operations, how to define rules and views, how to create components, how to add registration and login to your existing Laravel applications, how to validate the data and save in the database, how to use sessions to show success notifications to the users, how to use CSRF tokens to securely submit the data on the server. Hello everyone, my name is Zura and I'm the Codeholic. On this channel I share my 12+ years of experience working as a professional software developer. At the moment I'm also working on the complete Laravel course, which will be multiple hours long, including big project, quizzes, challenges, lessons in written form alongside with the video content, with several more benefits. Whenever the course is ready, I will announce it here on YouTube. So if you don't want to miss that, you should consider subscribing and enable notifications. When you are watching this in the future, maybe the course is already released, so check the video description. No further ado, let's jump into this crash course. Before we jump into the course, let's talk about a few dependencies and how to set up the working environment. First of all, we need PHP working on your operating system. For this, I recommend XAMPP, which is a package, and it contains MariaDB, PHP, and Apache. We don't need MySQL or MariaDB, we don't need Apache, we only need PHP, and this is the good choice. We also need Composer, which is PHP Package Manager. Make sure you have Composer command globally available in the terminal. We're going to also need Node.js and npm because Laravel uses Vite, and we're going to use the Vite as well. I also recommend to download and set up Git and Git Bash because Git Bash is much more intelligent terminal than CMD or PowerShell, and I'm going to use Git Bash to create the project. This particular course I'm going to develop on VS Code. Sometimes I use VS Code for PHP, sometimes I use PHP Storm, but for this specific course, I want my working environment to be as close to your working environment as possible. That's why I decided to develop this on VS Code so that you can follow with me exactly as I'm doing. Probably you are also using VS Code and you'll be just close to my environment and you can easily debug the issues. I'm going to also mention several extensions which I'm using in the VS Code and make sure you have these extensions because sometimes things might not work on your machine like it's working on mine. So we're going to have first of all the following PHP extensions. This is my favorite extension on VS Code for PHP. We're going to also install Laravel Blade Formatter, Laravel Blade Snippets, Laravel Extra IntelliSense. We're going to install Laravel GoToView, and we're going to install Auto Rename Tag, Highlight Matching Tag, Prettier, IntelliSense for CSS class names in HTML, and Talon CSS IntelliSense. Make sure you have everything installed what I just mentioned, and then we can create Laravel project. Now let's install the Laravel project, and I'm going to execute the following command in terminal. Composer create -project Laravel/Laravel, and then here I'm going to provide the local folder name inside which I'm going to create my Laravel project. And I'm going to call this Laravel 11 crash-course. Let's hit the enter on this. While the Laravel is being installed, let me tell you how you can deploy your Laravel projects on production environment. In this course, we're going to learn the most basic things of Laravel, create simple project, and implement registration and login. But if you are interested to deploy your Laravel projects on production environment and assign custom domain to it, I do have separate dedicated videos on these topics. I have a video how you can deploy Laravel on shared hosting as well as on VPS hosting, how you can do the deployment with manual steps, or how to automate your deployment through GitHub Actions and CI/CD pipelines, so that whenever you push something on the main branch, that's going to be deployed on production. My choice of hosting provider is Hostinger. Let's check how the Laravel installation goes. Okay, it is downloading packages and progressing. I have been personally using Hostinger services for past 3 years and have been extremely happy with their services. They provide shared hosting, VPS hosting, cloud hosting, and even email hosting. Their prices are very affordable and servers are pretty fast. Let's go back to the Laravel installation. Okay, it finished, and now let's open it using VS Code. Now let's collapse the left side, and I'm going to open new terminal, and I'm going to execute the following command: php artisan serve. This will start PHP's built-in server, and we will be able to browse the application in the browser. Let's hit the enter, and here we see that the application now is running on localhost port 8000. Now let's open the browser, and I'm going to reload the page, and we're going to see Laravel 11's default welcome page. So this is how looks like Laravel 11's default welcome page, which in my opinion is looking great. Now let's open VS Code again. I'm going to open one more terminal, and we're going to install npm packages by executing npm install. Hostinger shared hosting services start at $2.99 per month, and that includes free domain, free unlimited SSL certificates, unlimited number of databases, and there are a lot more than this. Go to the website hostinger.com/zuratc. Explore your desired hosting service type, and if you decide to grab it, use the coupon code ZURATC, which will give you extra 10% off on already discounted price. Now, let's go back to our project and see if npm install finished. npm install was successfully completed, and now we're going to execute npm run dev. Right now, we just spin up the new Vite server, which listens for the asset changes such as CSS or JavaScript, and will update our web application based on the new changes. So we are going to modify CSS at a later section of this course, and we will need this Vite server running in order our CSS changes to be reflected on the website. Now let's explore Laravel 11's file and folder structure. There are several key folders in Laravel 11 project inside which we're going to do most of our work. One of them is the app folder. App folder contains right now 3 main folders: HTTP, models, and providers. This is how it comes by default on the installation, but if we execute certain Artisan commands, it's going to create more folders and more files inside the app folder. That's going to be one of the most important folders inside which we're going to do most of our work. Inside HTTP we have controllers, and inside controllers we have only single controller. Inside models we have only user model, and inside providers we have only app service provider. But again, as I mentioned, after running certain commands, we are going to create more files and folders inside the app folder. Inside Bootstrap, we have 2 main files, app.php and providers.php. App.php is responsible to create the application, configure routing, configure the middlewares, exception, create and return that. And that returned application is going to be used into other files. Providers.php is just an array which returns the service providers defined in our project. Inside config, we have all the configuration files necessary for all the services that is available in Laravel, such as database, cache, authentication, application, and so on. We're going to talk more about configuration in later sessions. In the database, we have 3 main folders: factories, migrations, and seeders, and we have the database.sqlite file. If you choose to use SQLite as your choice of database for Laravel projects, it's going to create the following file when you execute migrations. So that contains all the data, all that single file is all the database. Okay. Inside factories, we have one factory for each model, and the purpose of the factory is to define the structure of each fields. Whenever we generate the seed data, how that seed data should be generated. And in this case, the name is a fake name, email is fake, email, and so on. Inside migrations, we have all the migrations files, and we're going to even create more migration files right here. Inside seeders, we're going to have all the seeders, and we have only one seeder by default, the database seeder. You can put all your seeding into a single file, or you can create more seeders right here. Inside public, we have the index.php, which is the entry script. That index.php is responsible to take the request and do all the necessary steps. Okay, so it imports this autoload PHP, it imports that bootstrap app PHP, which is the application, and it calls this handle request. That public folder is a single web accessible folder in our project. Everything, whatever you put in the public folder, can be accessed through the browser. So you should be careful, don't put any sensitive information in the public folder. The second mostly used folder by us is going to be resources. The first is app, and second is going to be resources, and we're going to work mostly inside these two folders. That contains CSS, JavaScript, and it contains views, and that views will be all the HTML associated to routes. Okay, right now we have only one view. Inside routes, we're going to have all the routes for console commands as well as for the browser. Inside storage, we're going to have generated files, and inside app folder, we're going to have files generated by our application, by our code, whatever we write. Okay, and the framework and logs is going to contain the files which will be generated by framework. For example, inside framework, we have sessions, cache, cached views, and so on. And inside logs, we have all the log files. Inside tests, there are only tests, and we are not going to write any tests in this course. And the vendor obviously contains all the third-party packages. Inside env, we have all the configuration options, like the name and the database credentials and the session configuration and the email and so on. And the env example is just an example file. And if you scroll down below, this Artisan is a file which is a command line interface. We're going to talk more about Artisan in the next lessons, but this is very similar to public index.php. It includes this autoload, it creates the application and calls this handle command. That's very useful file, and we're going to need that a lot. Then obviously these are clear, and PHP unit is for unit tests, and we have this vite config.js, which is the configuration file for vite server. Now let's do Artisan overview. I'm going to bring up the terminal, open new terminal, and I'm going to type php artisan list. Let's expand this and have a look. So it gives us all the available list, the commands that is available in the Artisan. And these commands are also grouped by its own category. For example, we can see all the queue related commands right here. If we scroll up, we can see all the make commands right here. Let me zoom out slightly. Okay, and we see all the make commands right here. We see event commands and db commands and so on. So just feel free to pause and have a look, or just type php artisan list in your terminal and you're going to see all the available Artisan commands. We're going to use many such type of commands during this course, such as make, for example, make controller or make model, or etc. Now let's talk about configuration in Laravel 11. When you expand the config folder, you're going to see the default configuration files for different services, such as for application, caching, authentication, and so on. These configuration files might not be all that is available in Laravel 11. To publish more configuration files, we just need to open terminal. I'm going to open new terminal and we're going to execute php artisan config : publish. When we hit the enter, Artisan will ask us which configuration file we would like to publish. If you pay attention, broadcasting, for example, is a file which doesn't exist by default in Laravel 11's config folder. Okay, so you just need to provide the configuration file name to publish new configuration file. Or, for example, if you decide that you want to delete a specific configuration file, for example, app, then you can republish that configuration file. I'm going to also mention that if you don't need those configuration files, and if the default values those configuration files are absolutely okay for you, you can feel free to delete all of them. And they exist in vendor, they exist in Laravel's core, and the default values will be taken from the Laravel core. Or, for example, if you only need one configuration option, let's say that you only need application name to customize, feel free to delete every other configuration option from that file, and Laravel will merge all the default options with those ones you just modified. So the whole thing in Laravel ecosystem goes to a way that whatever you don't need in your project, you can delete. Whether this is going to be a file or configuration option, you can delete because the default values exist and those default values will be taken from the Laravel's core. If you know exactly which configuration file you want to publish, you can provide that configuration file name exactly right here. For example, I can provide broadcasting right here. I'm going to hit the enter and it's going to publish the broadcasting configuration file, which will be now available right here. Now let's open web.php from roles folder. So this is the main file from the roles folder, which should contain all the routings in our browser. Okay. At the moment we have only one route on slash. It's going to render this welcome view. But where is this welcome view? All the views are located under resources, views. And right here we see this welcome.blade.php. Whenever rendering a view, we don't need to provide this .blade.php. We just provide the view name and Laravel will resolve the following file. Let's open this welcome blade.php and we're going to see it's a very standard HTML and we have some PHP and Blade related things. For example, here we are outputting the application's current language, and down below we have some directives, which we're going to talk more about this later. But what I'm going to do is just delete everything from here, and inside H1 probably just write welcome. Okay, whenever I save this, reload, we see this welcome. And if I inspect this right now and just check a page source, we just see H1. We don't see this doc type HTML or anything like this. So let me undo this. And now I'm going to do the following. I'm going to create now a new controller and render this welcome blade from that controller. Okay. Instead of this closure function, I'm going to pass controller and its own action. So for this, let me bring up the terminal. And I'm going to execute the following command: php artisan make controller. So I'm just creating new controller. I'm going to call this welcome controller and I'm going to hit the enter. Now the output tells me that under app HTTP controllers, welcome controller was created. So I can hit a control on my keyboard and mouse and it's going to open this welcome controller, which is an empty class. It extends this controller. Okay, I'm going to define now public function right here. Let's call this function welcome. And then from here, I'm going to return the result of the view and I'm going to render welcome. So I'm rendering the same view as it is written right here. Just now, I'm going to remove this closure and I'm going to replace this with controller, welcome controller, class, and the method name, welcome. Methods are also called actions, so I'm going to mention this as action. So then I'm going to provide right here name as well. Each road optionally can have name, but it's very good practice to associate name on every road. I'm going to call this welcome. Now I save this and reload the page and we see the exact same welcome page. Now I'm going to generate Eloquent model and its related migration. Let's bring up the terminal. I'm going to execute php artisan make model and I'm going to give the name to the model. I'm going to call this note and I'm going to provide -m flag, which indicates that I want to generate migration file as well. So as soon as I hit the enter, I see two files generated, app models node.php and database migrations and the new migration file. First, let's open this node PHP and have a look. It's nothing complicated right here. This class extends from the Eloquent model and it has factory. Now let's open this migration file and have a look. Based on the model name, the following migration was generated, and here we see these nodes. So the following migration is going to create nodes table, and the table will have ID and it's going to have timestamps column right there. So whenever I click Control and mouse right here, we see two columns, created at and updated at. So this timestamp method basically adds two columns to the database table, created at and updated at. We're going to add two more columns right here. So first, I'm going to provide long text note, the note itself. That's going to be the long content of the note. Then I'm going to provide right here foreign ID column, user ID, and that needs to be constrained on users. Basically, using this line, I'm telling Laravel to create the user ID column, which will be foreign ID to users table's primary key, okay, which will be ID in this case. So except that long text and foreign ID, there are much more methods, like we can provide integer, we can add a Boolean columns, we can do even much more. We can provide string, where the first argument of this string is the column name, the second argument is the length of the column, and so on. Let me revert this into long text. Once we have this migration ready, we can bring up the terminal again and execute PHP Artisan migrate, which will apply this new migration. It's going to apply basically all unapplied migrations, okay, to the database. And now we have this nodes table created in the database. If I try to execute PHP Artisan migrate, we see that nothing to migrate. Now I'm going to create factory and write the code in the seeder to create seed data in the database. First of all, let's execute PHP Artisan make factory, and I'm going to call my factory node factory, and I'm going to also provide -- model equals node. This will tell the Laravel that the node model is the model for the node factory. So I'm going to hit the enter. The node factory was created. I'm going to control and click on this. It's going to open this, and now we're going to adjust this definition. Okay, so I'm going to define that the node is going to be fake text, but with some real text, not lorem ipsum, but some real text. And I'm going to provide the length of this real text. So every time, whenever we want to create new node, it's going to generate a new fake real text. Okay, so, and the user ID is going to be at the moment hard-coded as 1. So this is my node factory. Now let's open database seeder, and here is code which creates a single user in the database. Now I'm going to do two things to this user. First, I'm going to provide the ID to be always 1, and then I'm going to provide password here as well. And I'm going to use bcrypt right now to encrypt the password in the database. So let's just provide some very secure and random password. Don't tell anyone, please. Okay, and after this, I'm going to generate 100 random content nodes in the database. For this, I'm going to use node model and make sure that app model's node is imported. So it should be imported right here at the top. Node factory, we're going to pass some number, 100. In this case, I'm going to create 100 factory, and then I'm going to execute create. Okay, so then we need to apply these, we need to execute this seeder to create the seed data. So there are a couple of ways to apply the seeder. First is to directly apply this only seed command, PHP Artisan db :seed. This will execute this database seeder run command, and it's going to create the user and 100 nodes in the database. There's other ways to execute the seeder alongside with the migration more specifically. So if we want to apply some migrations alongside with the seeder, we can do like a PHP Artisan migrate -- seed. So it will apply all unapplied migrations, plus it's going to execute this db seed command. And there's another one to first roll back all the migrations, like PHP Artisan migrate refresh. It's going to roll back, then reapply, and then it's going to execute the seeder. Okay, we can do like those three have different meanings. You should know which one you're going to use. In our specific case, all of them will do the same thing. So if we just do this, it's going to just roll back the migrations, reapply them, and then it's going to see the database. So at the end of the day, we have one user and 100 random nodes in the database. Now we have the database schema ready. We have some C data. Now we're going to start working with this data. For this, we need node controller. I'm going to bring up the terminal and execute PHP Artisan make controller node controller. But I'm going to specify -- resource flag, which indicates that I want this controller to serve as a resource controller for my node object. We're going to provide as well right here -- model equals node. So that's going to be resource controller for the node model. As soon as I hit the enter, it creates this node controller. Let's open this and have a look. The node controller has the following 7 methods: to display all the nodes, to display the form to create node, to create new node, to show specific node, to show form to update one node, to update node, and to delete the node. Pay attention that in some of the methods, like in destroy or in update right here, or in edit and show, we're accepting an instance of the node model, node eloquent model, what we just generated. Okay, so we're going to talk more about this, but at the moment, let's do the following: from index, from create, from show, and from edit. I'm going to use multi-cursor functionality, and I'm going to return just the name of the method. So let's use this multi-cursor functionality and just return edit, show, create, and index. So we have the controller ready. Now let's open web.php and we need to define roles, corresponding roles for these actions. First, let's import node controller. We're going to need that right here. Then let's start defining roles. On get requests, whenever get request is made on /node, we are going to use node controllers index method to handle that. I'm going to also associate name to that specific row, and this is going to be node.index. Okay, in a similar way, whenever the get request is made on node/create, we are going to pass these into node controller create action to handle this, and I'm going to associate name to it. Node.create is going to be the name. Okay, now whenever post request is made on /node, we're going to pass this node controller store method, and let's associate this name to it as well. Okay, and we're going to keep doing like this and define all these 7 rules for different 7 actions. So here we're going to have whenever get request is made on node/specific ID, okay, it will be passed into node controller show, and this is the root name. Whenever the get request is made on node/id/edit, it will be handled by this edit method, and here's the name. Whenever put request is made on node/id, it will be handled by this update, and here's the name. And whenever delete request is made on node/id, it will be handled by this destroy method, and this is the name of the root. Now let's save this and have a look in the browser. So we are going to just access to node, and we see index. If we try to access /create, we see create. If we try to access node slash some specific ID, we see show. Let me talk more about what is this. So this is a route parameter. So this will be converted into a variable and pass that into node controller. Okay, so in the node controller for this show method, we expect right now node instance of the node class, but we can change this and call this string, for example, ID, and then we can simply print that ID as well. So now if I reload, we see show 1. So we take that ID and use that ID. However, Laravel provides this route model binding functionality, which means that system will automatically try to find node based on the following ID and then resolve this function passing the instance of that model. So in this case, we already have this node and instance of the node model, okay, which is pretty awesome in my opinion. So the same thing happens right here, here, and here. Okay, so every route is going to work. Now, I want to tell you that there's a shorthand of doing this. Instead of this 7 line of code, we can do this in a single line, basically, in Laravel. I just wanted to show this to you. So for this, we're going to use route resource. We're going to pass the resource name, and we're going to pass the controller, which is going to be node controller class. Okay, so this single line generates these 7 routes with these 7 corresponding route names. So we can comment this, and now this is gonna work in the same way, like index / create, and you get the idea. We have the controller ready. We have data in the database. Now let's create the views for rendering the content. So we have four main actions which requires views, like index, create, show, and edit. We're going to generate those views under resources views, but I'm going to generate them into a single folder, and I'm going to call the folder node. So it's a common practice to create new folder and put all the views associated to a specific resource in that folder. I'm going to generate these through Artisan. So let's bring up the terminal and execute php artisan make view, and I'm going to call the view node.index. Whenever I introduce dot right here, which means this means that it should put that index view inside node folder. Okay, so I hit the enter and look at this, resources views node / index plate php was created. Now the second view is node create, third view is going to be node edit, and we're going to have node show as well. So 4 views were generated. All of them can be found right here under views node. And let me quickly write some texts inside. So edit. Okay, so I modified all those 4 views. Now let's open node controller, and I'm going to render these views. So right here, 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 and here. I'm going to use again multi-cursor functionality, view, and pass string, the view name. But we're going to also pass the folder name. So it cannot found views like this inside resources views. The views are inside node folder. So now whenever I type node.show, node.edit, it's gonna resolve those views. So I'm gonna save this, and now let's have a look. Reload. Now this is inside H1. Now this is inside H1 as well, and we can check the page source as well. As you can see, this is very basic HTML. It doesn't have layout, it doesn't have doctype HTML, head, body, etc. The same thing happens on every road what we have just described. We need layout. We can obviously put this doctype HTML right here and here, but we're going to have repeated code. We want a single file, which is going to be the layout file, and use that in other blade files. Now let's define layout. I'm going to do this under views, and inside views, I'm going to create a new folder called components. And inside components, I'm going to create layout.blade.php. So Laravel has a separate section of components, UI components. And whenever we put a blade file inside components, that can be used slightly differently inside blade files. For example, because we put layout blade inside components, now we can use that layout file in the following way: x-layout. So x prefix right here is means that we are trying to get the component which has name layout. This is exactly what we have right here. Obviously, our layout blade, actually, I shouldn't do this right here. Oops. Our layout blade is actually empty. Okay, so let me copy some content from this welcome blade. I'm going to copy actually everything inside layout blade, but I'm going to modify that. Let's scroll up. I'm going to remove these styles, and I'm going to remove everything from this body. Okay, so this is my layout, but where to render the actual blade view content, we need to specify this inside the layout. I want this to be rendered inside the body, and there's a special variable for this. To output all kind of variables inside the blade, we're going to use double curly braces. Okay, so inside double curly braces, we're going to output the variables, and the special variable for the view content is called slot. So this is the place where I want the view content to be output. Now let's open index blade, for example, and I'm going to change this div into x-layout, using which now this tells Laravel that, hey, there's the component called layout. Let's use this. And whatever is the child of this x layout is going to be pushed into this slot variable in output right here. Now, if we just open index right here, we're going to see the following HTML, and right here is the actual content. Okay, if we try to access /create, it still renders the following HTML. So let's go into create, and we're going to change this into x-layout. And here we go. So we have this, and let's go into edit and change this into x-layout. And let's do the same thing for show as well. X-layout. And just like this, we have defined layout, and we are using now this in every blade file for our resource. Now we have roles defined, we have database, and we have content in the database, we have views created, and now let's select the content from the database and pass that into views and render them inside views. Let's start with the index. First, I'm going to create a variable, notes, then I'm going to use the app models note model, and I'm going to execute query method on this, which will return the instance of the query builder, which has a lot of methods actually, and I'm going to apply order by, for example. I want to order all the nodes by created at in descending order. And I want, if I simply call get right here, it's going to give me all the available nodes from the database. Okay, let's leave get right now, and I'm going to dump right now all these nodes. This dnd is a helper function which prints the variable, and it dies right here, so it doesn't continue actually. Now let's open this index and reload, and we're going to see that the variable we're printing is an instance of Eloquent collection, this one, and it has 100 items inside its array, and all of them is an instance of app models node, and we can expand each model and have a look at more details to it. So what I want is to implement also pagination. So instead of getting all 100, I'm going to call paginate right here. By default, the pagination has 15 as a default value, but we can provide 10 or whatever number you want, basically. I'm going to actually leave this into 15 because I'm going to show 3 columns and 5 rows totally of my notes. And now I have these notes, and if I print these, previously this is the Eloquent collection. If I reload this page, now this is length-aware paginator. So this is actually an instance of pagination which has how many items we have on per page. Here are all the items. We see 15 items totally, and we see the pagination links on each page, and we have the total number of items and what's the last page, and it has even more information internally. Okay, so now we're going to take these nodes and pass it into node index and use it. To pass some variables to the view, we're going to pass the second argument into the view, which should be an array. Okay, and inside this array, the key will be the variable name inside the blade file, and the value will be what we are going to pass there. So I'm passing, let's call this notes. So I'm passing the following variable, which should be created as a notes variable inside this node index as well. We can even use compact function for this, but I generally prefer to write this as an associative array. Okay, awesome. While we are in the controller, we need to pass additional information. So I'm going to scroll down below on the show method, and I'm going to pass note right here and right here as well. So let's use this multi-cursor, and I'm going to pass note variable in these 2 places. Okay, now this is awesome. Let's go into index blade PHP of our nodes, and we have to work on this file. So I want to focus more on Laravel functionality and not spend time on HTML and CSS. So I'm just going to copy and paste very basic HTML markup. And this is it. It's a very basic HTML. We have this div, we have this add new node button, we have the container for the nodes, and inside there we have a single node which should be iterated for each node. Okay, that should be iterated. And you can just go ahead and type this, pause right now and go ahead and type this, or you can get the following template from the GitHub repository. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just to iterate over the nodes what we passed from here, and we're going to render each individual node. So in Blade, we have directives. We have a lot of directives for if-else statements, for switch case, for sessions, and for everything. So in this case, I'm going to use for each directive. Every directive in Blade starts with the @ symbol. And here the auto-completion gives me all the available directives. You can see that there's a lot. So in this specific case, I'm going to use for each directive, and I'm going to pass notes. The first is note. Okay, so this for each loop is very similar how you would write in vanilla PHP. Okay, so we're iterating over nodes, creating a loop variable node, and then I can use that node variable to render some content. So let's use it right here. Instead of this hard-coded lorem ipsum, I'm gonna actually render node objects node column. Okay, so this node is an instance of app models node, but the node itself has node column which we gave when we defined the migration. So I want to output that column information. So now I save this and have a look in the browser, reload the page, and let's zoom out slightly right now and have a look. So here are nodes. So this is the first node. We see view, edit, and delete. This is the second node. This is the third node, and we see 15 nodes totally. So we have a lot of content right here, which I'm going to reduce. I'm going to zoom in also. To reduce the content, I'm going to use str helper class in Laravel with words method. So that words method accepts 2 arguments. First is the content, and second is how many words do I want to take. I want to take 30 words out of this content. So if I save this and reload the page, we're going to see that the content for each node is now shrinked. Okay, we are taking only 30 words for each node. The links, what we see right here, new node, view, edit, those links are just broken. They don't work because we have hashes everywhere. To make this working, we need to we have two ways. Basically, one option is to link this into node/create like this, and whenever we click on this new node, it's going to open this node create. But this is not the perfect solution in Laravel. So it's always good practice to generate your routes based on the route names. And this is, in my opinion, the main purpose why you should give names to every route. So in our case, I'm going to use route. And here we need to provide the route name. That's going to be node.create. Okay, now if I save this and reload the page, whenever I click this new node, it's going to open the following URL. So in the same way, we're going to generate links for view and for edit. However, view and edit routes require variables. If we open web.php, we can see that show, which is the same as view, and edit both require the ID of the node we want to see. So from here, when we use node.show, we need to pass node ID, or we can even pass the entire node object, and Laravel resolve this based on the primary key of the model. So here we can pass the node, and here we need to change this into edit and pass the node also. Now we save this, go back into node listing, we click on view, it's going to open the view for the specific node. We click on edit, and it's going to open the edit page of that specific node. Now I want to apply some CSS styles to the following nodes, because you agree this doesn't look great. Let's open VS Code, and I'm going to open resources, CSS, app CSS. So this is the file inside which we're going to put the CSS. I'm going to copy and paste my CSS. This is very basic CSS. You don't need to type this because it's a long. You can find the link of the CSS in the description of the video or in the project repository, and you can grab that and put this in the project. Okay, so but whenever we put this, it is not included automatically. So we have to make sure that this CSS file is included and is included properly as well. So if we open layout blade, we see that basically no CSS files are included. These are the fonts which were copied from the welcome. So I think we're going to remove this. I'm going to remove this. Okay, but no CSS file is included. How to make this working? So in order the CSS file to be included, it needs to be actually inside this public folder. Okay, the only files that can be included inside this layout blade should be inside the public folder. It needs to be web accessible, and the only folder which is web accessible is this public folder. So one option would be to copy this app CSS into public, and then we will be able to access in the following way /app.css, but this is not going to be ideal. This is not how we should do this. This is the case where Vite server is coming, and we're going to use Vite server to properly include this CSS file right here. So we're going to use Vite directive, and we're going to pass right here an array and specify that which files I want to be included. Okay, and let's first check Vite configuration file right here. So Vite config file has two input files, resources CSS app CSS and resources JS app JS. So these are the files which are input for Vite server. So we can just copy them and put them right here. Okay, as soon as we do this, now these files are included using Vite. Just make sure that the Vite server is up and running right here. So now let's go in the browser, reload it, and voila, we see the following output. I'm going to zoom out slightly. So now here we see all these styles, and let's see also page source. So here we have this Vite server, Vite client, and we have the following CSS. So this is our CSS. It is coming from the Vite server. And Vite is actually that is serving this file as well as this file, and the CSS as well as the JavaScript are included from the Vite server. Okay, But if you want to build your application on production, I'm going to stop this right now using Control and C. If you want to build your application on production, you need to build those asset files. For this, we're going to execute npm run build, where when we hit the enter, it's going to generate the following files under public build. So now those files are web accessible. We can see them under public folder, public build assets. Okay, and you can put this on your server and they will be served. Now, if we check, if we reload in the browser, we're going to see that they are coming from the Laravel server, from build assets. They are not coming anymore from the Vite server, which is actually correct because we have the build version. But as soon as we execute npm run dev, then the Vite server starts running. We reload the page and they are coming from the Vite server. Okay. During development, I recommend to have this Vite server up and running, and you should only execute npm run build if you want to put the project on production. This is our node create file. Now let's define proper HTML for create blade, show blade, or edit blade. I have this very basic HTML prepared for each of these files. I'm just going to copy and paste. Again, you can pause right here and type this. This is not too much HTML. If you also don't want to spend time on this, you can grab this from the repository. Very basic HTML, page title. We have basic form with action, method post, class, text area, and buttons. Okay, let's now get this code for show as well. I'm going to put this right here. Again, container, we have this node header. We are displaying right here node, and I'm going to display right here the node date as well. Then we have the edit and delete buttons, and this is the place where the actual node should be displayed. And lastly, we're going to have this edit blade. I'm just going to paste right here. It's very similar to the create blade. We have this edit title, we have this form with post, we have this text area, and this is the content which should be updated, and we have this node buttons. Since we have this basic HTML, now let's make this live and let's actually output the correct things right here. So for example, whenever we submit this form, it needs to go to the proper controller action, proper root, and the root needs to be node.store. So this is the root name, or which needs to be executed when we submit this. Okay, this is awesome. Whenever we cancel this, we can go back into node.index. Now let's go into show blade. So this is the place where the node date needs to be outputted. Inside double curly braces, we can use node created at, this is the date column, and we can output that. On the edit, we can use root node.edit, and we're going to pass as an argument entire node object or the node ID. And right here, we're going to output node. So in the index, we are outputting only the first 30 words of the node, but here on the show, we're going to output the entire content of this node. Let's go in the edit. Right here in this place, we're going to output the node itself. That's going to be node right here. Whenever we hit the cancel, we can go into node.index, and on the action, we're going to execute node.update, and we're going to provide the node object here as well. Okay, awesome. Let's have a look now in the browser. So this is create new node. We can type our content right here. When we click on cancel, we go back into node list. Whenever I click on view, the following view file is opened. We can zoom out slightly. We see the node date. We see these two buttons, and this is actually the view of the node. We click edit. We are redirected to the edit page where we can change our node, and we're going to implement later to hit the submit button and update that. Now let's implement creating new node. Let's go again in the create blade, and we have almost everything ready. Just one thing is missing, and that thing is the CSRF token. Okay, first of all, let me show you what it's going to look like if we don't have CSRF token. So let's open Node controller. Let's find the store method, and we're going to implement the backend side. So we're going to take the request, and we're going to call validate on this request, and the validate accepts an associative array. So the key inside this associative array needs to be the input name, and our input is called node right here. So we're going to pass node right here. Then we're going to provide the validation rules. The node needs to be required, and it needs to be also string. Okay, we don't have any length restriction on the node. So once the validation is finished, it's going to return the validated data. This is going to be that data. We're going to take the data and pass it into node create function. Once the node is created, it's going to return this node model. Okay, and this will be already created node in the database. And then we are going to redirect user to some route. For example, node.show. And we're going to pass the just created node right here. And I'm going to additionally provide message to be node was created. Okay, what is this message? This message is a session message, which we're going to take out and use that in the layout file. But I'm going to mention one additional thing right here. So first, when the node is created, the node requires user ID as well. So inside data for user ID key, I'm going to push at the moment hard-coded 1. But later we're going to implement to take that 1 from the currently authenticated user. But even this is not going to work, because whenever we pass that associative type of array in the node needs to know what fields it needs to take from that associative array. Okay, what columns needs to be filled from that associative array. For this, there is protected array, protected fillable array, which does the exact same thing what I just described. So we're gonna provide right here node and user ID, which means that whenever we pass associative array inside the create function, it's gonna take node and user ID from them. And just like this, whenever this code is executed, the node is gonna be created. Now let's take care of displaying this message. I'm gonna open layout blade, and right here above this slot, above where page content is displayed, I am going to use session directive. Okay, session, we're going to pass the session message name, right here message, and we're going to have end session. Okay, and inside there we are going to generate div. Let's give it class success message, and inside the div I'm going to use session function to output an actual message. That message will be whatever we pass from here. Now, if I go in the create, reload this, I type something test content and hit the submit button, we see this page expired, and that happens because of this CSRF token. Okay, we need to go into create blade and we need to add the CSRF token. CSRF. It's a cross-site request forgery methodology to prevent submission of forms from somebody else's website to your website. That's why we need this CSRF token. Okay. Now, if I go back, reload, test node, hit the submit button, the test node was created, message was also displayed. And if we go back now into node list, we're going to see this test node right here. Now let's take care of the node update. We click edit right here, we change something, and we want, whenever we submit, we want it to be updated. Let's go into edit blade, and I'm going to close everything else. And here we have almost everything ready except two things. First, we have to provide CSRF token right here as well. And second is that the update is handled through the method put. If we open web.php and see the rules we defined previously, like this one, for example, put request is necessary to update specific node. Okay, but we are sending post request. This is not going to work. However, in Laravel, there exists a directive called method, and whatever we provide right here, for example, in this case, we're going to provide put, this will override the method post right here, and Laravel will have a look at this. If this is put, okay, so then this route will be matched and node controller's update will be executed. Okay, now it's time to open node controllers update and implement this part. Actually, I'm going to copy everything from create, put this in the update, and adjust few things. So we're going to still validate the data, get the node. We don't want to put the user ID right here because we don't never change the user ID of the node. However, instead of node create, we're going to call on existing node update. We're going to pass entire data. And then once this is updated, we're going to redirect into node show, and node was updated. Now I save this. Let's provide some text, updated, and hit the submit button. And we see node was updated. And the message right here tells the same thing. Now we're going to handle node delete as well, and we have two places where this delete button is displayed. One is right here, and second is in the node listing. Let's open VS Code and go into first. Let's open index blade and show blade. So these are the two files. Inside index blade, right here we have this button. So whenever we want to delete something based on the rules, delete request needs to be sent, okay, to the following route. So we are going to replace this button with a form which has proper route. The route needs to be node.destroy, but we're going to provide also right here node which needs to be destroyed. We're going to also provide method right here to be post because we're modifying something. But we are going to provide right here two directives. One is going to be for CSRF and second is going to be for method with delete method. And then I'm going to put this button right here. Okay, so this is all what you need. Now I'm going to get this form and put this in the show blade in this place. Let's open node controller, scroll down below and implement this part. On the node, I'm going to call delete. And then I'm going to redirect user to some route. In this case, let's redirect into node index. We don't want this variable here with message node was deleted. So I'm going to save this. Whenever I click delete right here, I'm redirected into index page with a message node was deleted. If I click delete right here, then this will become the first node. Okay, let's try this. Click on delete here. And now this became the first node. So we have the listing, we display 15 items, but we don't display these pagination links, which is super easy to display in Laravel. Let's go in the index blade and let's put this right here, maybe after nodes. So this nodes variable is an instance of paginator and it can be iterated, but it also has different methods. On nodes, I'm going to call links, which will generate all the pagination links and information that is necessary. So once I save this and reload the page, if I scroll down below, we see right here previous and next, we see some sort of summary of the pagination. And we also see huge left arrow button and huge right arrow button. So those are very unstyled and looking ugly, but this is because Laravel's pagination component by default is looking for Tailwind CSS classes to properly be styled. Okay, we're gonna add the title and CSS later when we implement the registration and login, but right now this is ugly, but it's gonna work. So if I click on next, we see that it opens the second page. If I scroll down below, we're gonna see that now we are on the second page. I'm gonna click on 6 and it's gonna go to the 6th page, and just like this, the pagination is actually working. Now let's add login and registration into our application with email verification as well. For this, we're going to use Breeze. Laravel Breeze is a starter kit package for setting up the login and registration into your project with profile management and password recovery as well. It's a super useful package. I use it almost all the time whenever I want to implement login and registration in my application. Before we install Laravel Breeze, make sure you back up these two files, app.css from resources CSS, app CSS, and web.php, where all your roads are located, because those two files will be updated by after installing Laravel Breeze, and if you don't have them back up, you're gonna lose the content right there. So make sure you back up this on a secure place, because we need to recover these after we install Laravel Breeze. To install this, we're gonna execute composer require Laravel /breeze -dev to install this as a dev dependency. The package was installed, and now we're going to execute php artisan breeze :install command, which asks a couple of questions: which breeze stack we want to install, and I'm going to choose the first one, which is blade. Hit the enter. Whether we want to enable the dark mode or not, I'm just going to type no here. And which testing framework do you prefer? I'm just going to hit the enter because I'm not going to write any tests at the moment. Breeze install command finished successfully, and now let's have a look in the browser how it looks like. Our routes not working anymore because, as I mentioned, if we open web.php, all our routes are gone. We don't have node related routes right here. We're going to recover them soon. I hope you saved that. As I mentioned, you needed to save that. Okay, now let's go into user.php, and I'm going to do one more thing. So at the moment, if I try to go into dashboard, or if I try to go on login, maybe let's just go to the /welcome. So we see this login and register right here. Whenever we register, we are automatically verified at the moment. Okay, in order email verification to be sent for email verification, basically, we need to implement the following interface from the user class. Okay, so here is must verify email. Let me uncomment this, and that user implements must verify email. Now, if we try to register, it sends the email verification. But where is that email received? That emails are saved under storage logs Laravel log, because based on the EN file, the mailer is set on the log. So for local development, all the emails are sent into log file. We can find this at the very bottom, somewhere right here, or we can clear this entire Laravel log file. We can click this resend verification email, and then we're going to find this as a very first thing. Verify email address, this is the subject. Scroll down below, this is actual link. I'm going to hit Control and click on this link. It's going to open in the background, and look at this. So we have been verified, and we see the dashboard page right now. Let's close this and reload this, and we will be authenticated here as well. Now let's try to recover web.php. But first of all, let's explore what's going on right here. So this is pretty obvious. It doesn't need any explanation. So on /dashboard, it is rendering this dashboard, but here's the middleware as well. The name is clear. But what is middleware? Middleware is a special class that sits in between the user's request and the actual action, the controller or the closure function. And the purpose of the middleware is to either block the request and don't reach to the destination, or even modify returned response. So in this specific case, there are two middlewares attached to this slash, and they are checked one by one. So first, the auth middleware is checked, is executed, and it is checking if the user is authenticated on the website. If the user is authenticated on the website, then the second middleware will be checked if the user's email is actually verified. If one of them is not satisfied, then we will not be able to access the dashboard page. Okay, right here, the middleware group is created, and the user needs to be authenticated in order to be able to access the profile page. So this is all good. Now we need to recover and maybe slightly adjust few things right here. So I'm going to delete that part. I'm gonna also delete this dashboard part, and I'm gonna create route middleware. I'm gonna pass auth here and verified. Then I'm gonna execute group passing function, and inside here I'm gonna paste all my routes which I pick up. Okay, and make sure that the node controller is imported right here. So now this means that I need to be authenticated and verified in order to be able to access all the node routes. So if I right now try to go into node, this lists all the node. The styles are lost, which we need to recover next. But you see that the new node is right here, view, edit, delete, all the buttons are right here, and the styles are completely gone. Also, Tailwind CSS resets all the styles. But if we check the HTML markup, we're going to see the same type of structure what we had before. Okay, now I'm going to copy this CSS and open app.css file from resources. And these are Tailwind CSS components. We're going to put this after that. Okay, so I'm just going to save this and reload the page. It does not seem to be working. If that doesn't work, probably something is wrong with the Vite server. We're going to open the second terminal, and as I guessed, the Vite server is actually killed. When we install new packages, in this case, the Breeze, Laravel Breeze installed Tailwind CSS, and that simply broke the Vite server. We're going to execute npm run dev. And once we do this and Vite server is up and running, we reload the page, and we are going to see our styles are actually back. Now the last thing what I'm going to do right here is that I'm going to change the layout of my nodes to the layout what is for the dashboard. Well, actually I have deleted right now the dashboard route, and we don't see the dashboard route layout, but the dashboard view is there right here. And the dashboard view is using XApp layout. XApp layout is the component located under views, layouts, app blade PHP. Okay, this is the layout what is used inside the dashboard. What we can do is just open this node, for example, index, and instead of X layout, change this into X app layout. And let's do the same thing for create, X app layout, for edit, and for show as well. Once we do this, we go back into nodes, reload the page, and now we are gonna see something. Okay, first of all, we see an error, road dashboard is not defined, which is something expected. The road with the name dashboard is used in multiple places in Laravel Breeze. And because we completely deleted that route from here, now we have the following error. So what we are going to do is just describe that route. So I'm going to do the following. Route, let's do actually redirect. So when on slash, we're going to redirect into slash node, and I'm going to give this also name called dashboard. So this means that the slash now is dashboard. Whenever the Laravel or Breeze, whenever the code tries to redirect to the dashboard, it's going to redirect into slash, and on slash, it's going to redirect into node. So we are probably doing a double redirect, but this is a quick hack so that we are always, the dashboard is right now our node application. If I log out, for example, and try to log in with my account, then I'm redirected to the dashboard page, which is right now node. The currently authenticated user is Zura, and Zura actually doesn't have any nodes at all. And Zura should not be seeing these nodes right here, okay? And why does this happen? Because actually we don't filter nodes based on the currently authenticated user. So let's close all the files, and I'm going to open node controller. And if we scroll up right here, we need to add the where condition to filter nodes by the currently authenticated user. Where user ID is request user ID. Okay, and using this approach, we'll be able to filter nodes by the currently authenticated user. If I scroll down below, we need to make some changes right here in the store as well. We are assigning the hard-coded one. Right here, we're going to use the request user ID as well. But in this case, I'm going to use this request variable, just showing to you that you can do the same thing in two different ways. Request user ID. Okay, we save that. Now we reload this page and we don't see any nodes because Zura doesn't have any nodes at all. Now I'm just going to try to create new test node, hit on submit. What just happened? Test node, hit on submit. Okay, we were redirected right here. Let's go into slash node and we see these two test nodes. Why the second one was created, probably it was a kind of, I double clicked on the submit button. Anyway, not a big deal. One very important thing. Right now I have two nodes. One has ID 103 and this one has 102, but there exists a node which has ID 1. And whenever I click on this, I'm able to see this node which has ID 1, which belongs to somebody else. And I should not be able to see that. We need to restrict this from this show. So to restrict this, we're going to add an if statement right here. If node user ID does not equal to request user ID, we are gonna call abort with 403. So which means that I'm gonna show forbidden error. Now if I reload this, I see forbidden. So this means that if the node doesn't belong to me, then I should not be able to see that. And we need this if statement when about to view the node to update it, or during update, or even during delete. We need that security check in every place. Now let's add final touches on our project. We're going to change this dashboard into nodes, and let's add a little bit of CSS paddings and so on. So let's open layout, which is the app layout, resources, views layout. We can actually delete this layout blade PHP. We don't need this anymore. Okay, we need this app blade PHP. And right here we have, excuse me, it is not app blade PHP. It is a navigation blade which contains that dashboard right here. So dashboard here, here, and here, those are root names. And for instead of dashboard, we're going to use root index. Right here, we're going to use nodes as a text. If you scroll down below, I think we have a second navigation, which is for responsive. And here we see this dashboard, node index, and nodes right here. I'm going to save this, and now we see nodes right here. And now let's add this small padding. I'm going to open index blade, and let's add padding Y12, for example. Save this, and we have this padding. If I click on view, we're gonna open show blade, and first of all, let's give this H1 text 3XL, and maybe padding Y4 to create some vertical padding. This is more like it. When we click on edit, we need to go into edit blade, and we need to give this text 3XL padding Y4. So here we go. And I think that's it. Let's check the pagination side. If I scroll down below, actually I'm going to log in with a second user who has more items. This is test. Let's log in. If I scroll down below, here's the pagination, and we probably need to give it some sort of div with padding of 6 maybe, and put this pagination inside there. Okay, and the pagination obviously works, and now this is tiled using tile1 CSS, and that's why it looks nice. And the last thing what I'm going to explain is that to customize this forbidden error message. So if the test user is trying to access the node 103, which belongs to user Zura, he sees this forbidden, okay, which we can easily customize. For this, we need to create new file under views. Inside views, let's create errors folder, and inside errors folder, we're going to create the file with the corresponding status code. In this case, 403.blade.php. Inside there, we can use x app layout, and then maybe inside h1 we can write forbidden. Once this file is created, if we just reload, we're going to see this our own custom error message. Obviously, you need to define something which is more nice and more descriptive than this is. This is the end of the course, and I hope you learned something new. Please let me know in the comment section what you think. If you like the video, hit the like button. If you want to see more Laravel related content, courses or projects, hit the subscribe button. Liking the video and subscribe is the best support. But if you want to do even more, you can check my website thecodeholic.com and consider buying my premium course, or maybe even consider becoming a Patreon. Check the videos what you see on the screen right now for more Laravel related content. Thanks for your time, and I will see you in the next video.